Hey everybody, it's Bevin. Welcome to Bevin FM Over 40 and Her Friends podcast. I'm your host, Bevin. I've said my name 3 times. It's time to start the show. My co-host Biscuit Reynolds exists in spirit. I hope he's with you right now, making snuffly noises. In some ways, being his companion for 7.5 years was like having a little frat boy in my house. Like he kind of just smelled. I mean, there were smells, and there was like whenever he would think to clean himself, which was not frequently because he had pain, he would like make these grumbly, loud slurping noises. It was like it was a lot. But you know what? I wouldn't change it for a second. It was just humorous to have a tiny creature make so much noise. Anyway, welcome to my podcast. We're going to talk about spirituality today, partially because I'm ever evolving spiritually, and also partially because I learn a lot from other people who talk about their spiritual practices. I feel like a little katamari, just like gathering more spiritual practices bit by bit. A katamari, if you're not familiar, it's from a video game by the same name. It's very good, very fun. And you roll a little ball and you gather things up, you like attract things, and it's always just resonance, right? Like what's making sense to me now. And I've noticed actually my spirituality has shifted quite a bit over time, just in terms of like who I'm getting nourishment from. And it's been 3 years since I did a podcast like this. I've had 2 other previous episodes. And actually, if you like this episode, it might be fun for you to go back to episode 85, which was 3 years ago. It's hard to believe. So 3 years ago, time just is rolling on. And then episode 4, which was 5 years ago. So those are 2 other episodes I did with the same premise, which is just talking about what I believe and who I connect to spiritually. A concept I learned as a Reiki master and Reiki healer. I don't necessarily teach Reiki, nor do I ever have the intention to teach Reiki, but I will teach people who, or attune people to Reiki, but I will teach people who know Reiki, like tips and tricks that I know. And I just keep gathering more. But something I learned, which I think is applicable to anyone who does any kind of healing work, is that it is very natural for people to come to you for a time and then move on, because the medicine they need from you may just be, for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. The same with friendships and relationships. So just remember that, like, sometimes there are classes I've been to with people where I've only ever taken the one class and it had a profound impact on me, but I never went back to the class, even as much as I ever intended to. So I kind of think about that a lot too with my like aerobics regulars, like I'm so grateful for the people who are very devoted to the practice and keep coming back to Fat Kid Dance Party. The same with like my podcast listeners, those of you who've been listening since the beginning. I'm so grateful that you're still here and you're still getting nourishment from this, and grateful to the new folks. I just feel like I'm just here, and I consistently put out work. There's only been one time in my life where I wasn't producing for the internet, and it was really hard time for me. So I have a lot of compassion for me at that time. And but I'm here. I'm consistent. And that's kind of I'm like a little steady Capricorn freight train. So here I am with another spirituality episode. And what's also interesting too is that there are several teachers that I have kind of, I wouldn't even say I've vibed out of them. It's just that I'm not needing the nourishment that I was getting before from whatever they were offering me. I have so much admiration and joy for the people who listen to my podcast who don't have a faith and don't believe what I believe and still get nourishment from it anyway. When I started creating content for the internet, I was a fat liberation person and like would not have described myself as even believing in God or a higher power. And I like, I just am a strong believer in take what you like and leave the rest for anything. And I've evolved over time. I continue to evolve. And like, I really love when people just get what they need. And also I had a friend of mine talk about how one of my earliest, I guess it must have been episode 4, my earliest spirituality episode, like helped turn a switch for her to like see how she could believe, right? So like again, this is all just an offering. And it's cool because like I've had some people recently say like, like I don't believe what you believe, but I really appreciate what you put out. And so shifting from being like, kind of more of a riots, not diets, body positivity blogger, creator, right? To someone who like I had to think and decide at some point to quote come out about my spirituality in the same way that I had to think and decide to come out about smoking cannabis. And now I talk about those things so liberally and I do not care, right? Like it is just like such a part of who I am. Like my top value is my relationship with God. And basically this episode is just going to go through like, what does that relationship look like right now? And like, why do I say it's like my relationship with God versus faith? Faith is belief in things unseen, which of course is a big part of having a relationship with God, but relationship is something that's an action, right? Like I think a lot of people, I mean, I've watched a lot of people get divorced over time. And I see it happen because it's like they fall out of the work of relationship. And I really think one of the things I've heard about a long-lasting marriage, is that like if you just don't ever stop courting your person, like don't ever stop like wooing them, like and I like the idea of true love. And I talked about this on my true love episode a few months ago, is just like the continual discovery of someone, just like when you have kids, like your kids are always teaching you stuff. So anyway, the continual discovery is like part of my relationship with God, and part of that is the evolution. So I want to talk about various places where I'm receiving, and one of the coolest things that has come through, and I want to say it was like probably around 2022, during Girl Moss Summer. That was the title I gave to that summer, where it was clear I needed to rest a lot. And I just, it was like I wanted to stop trying for a while. And I did kind of stop trying for a while. And I think that was good because I needed to just be and receive. And in Girl Moss Summer, I was doing a microdosing cohort with Tamara of Ganja Yoga Hawaii. I've done an episode with Tamara. I forget what number it was. It's like in the 120s, I think. And I would highly recommend, if you are curious about using psilocybin for your own spiritual awakening or your healing, or creating and nourishing your neuroplasticity so that your beneficial habits and your beneficial thought work can have a better impact and like create more grooves, I would really recommend microdosing psilocybin to assist with that. It's like, I think it's just like 10x as your healing. And part of the first thing I got through the first cohort, so she does kind of strain specific cohorts, which was very helpful for me, was to like commit to a strain for a period of time. And the way I microdose is a little different now than the way I used to. And I used to like actually hate microdosing because it felt like a hot dog going through a hallway. But actually, I really like it now because I don't actually like to feel like the Matrix is being pulled out from under me, or like I'm being released from the Matrix. Like I've had multiple experiences where like I'm like doing a child's pose on the fourth floor, being like, I don't like losing verbal capacity, right? Like it's kind of nuts. And I prefer just the light experience of a sub-perceptual dose helping root me into things and help me get realizations. That was a long, windy road to say I realized that there was ancient wisdom in my bone marrow that was there for me, that I am the direct descendant of the Aboriginal woman, the first woman, right, who created all of us, right? Like at some point, humans evolved, right? Like, and like wherever that came from, that wisdom is passed down. And like we always talk about like mother's intuition and things like that. But like, yeah, actually, actually, you have things that are in you that colonization, coloniality has tried to has worked really hard and actually succeeded in making you doubt and avoid and ignore. And so I just want to encourage you, whatever your practice is, whatever you believe in, that you have resonant wisdom that's coming through your body. And I've mentioned this on many episodes of the podcast, but it's clear it's just information that wants to keep flowing through me. Is that the matrix of Mother Earth wants to connect you directly and wants you to do it without your telephone. So like, your little, I call it my love rectangle. So when you have your love rectangle not with you and you're out in the matrix of Mother Earth, so just like go out in the garden, leave the phone inside. That's what I've been doing. I've also taken walks in the woods. Like last week, I unplugged the modem, the router, shut down the computer, shut down my phone, shut down the robot at home, went on a walk in the woods on a known path. Like if I go missing in the woods, people will know where to find me because I don't go off the path, especially if I don't have my phone. And I like, it was like I did like 6 weeks worth of work in one walk, because like, and this is what I pray for. There's a whole episode I do about like how I pray for ease. And so here I go, like just downloading stuff, like knowing what to do next. Right. So anyway, your spirituality is as simple as making space for the things to come through you. But like there is something to like the matrix of Mother Earth activating stuff in us. Like I can't even tell you what all of that is really, but I know that it works for me. Maybe it'll work for you. So remember your ancient wisdom, and that like this is something that's really helped me. I called it, so I had Girl Moss Summer 2022, Girl Moss Summer 2023, the sequel, because I was like, looks like I still need more rest. And then this year, when I hit 2024, and I talked about this on an episode about my habits, but I'm calling it Coltrane Winter, where I was just like doing more, chugga, 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 but slow and with ease, right? So I tried to just stay consistent with my habits, and I kind of get thrown off track. I'm still on track, but I got slowed way down during Taurus season, but that was just energetics. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but Gemini season's giving me a little bit more sparkle and a little bit more energy. So I'm excited to create more. I'm working on an oracle deck. This is part of what came through in the forest last week on the occasion of the Sagittarius full moon. So I've known for a while I was going to write a flower oracle specifically, and it just like came through like how it is, what I'm doing, what the words are, you know what I mean? And it's just like it's an interesting thing, like channeling work, because it's like I'm writing it, quote unquote, but like I'm really just like working with the divine to get information that has been transmitted to me through my interactions with these flowers. Like it turns out, girl, last summer I was working, I just didn't know how I was working. So anyway, Gemini season, we're grateful for it. Another way that I nurture my spirituality is just the study of astrology. Astrology is like metaphysical folklore, meaning it is a metaphysical thing that is like, I mean, there's empirical astrology, my favorite kind, which is just what do you see, right? Like I can see Jupiter, like, well, when Jupiter was in Taurus and Aries, I could see it from my right here. Like when it came up on the horizon, like I could see it from my house. Like it's so cool. But like, just like where things are in the sky, you can literally see it, right? But people have been tracking astrology for thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands of years, since probably pre-civilization, and creating and observing archetypes and personalities that come through the unique mix of what is present in the sky when something is birthed. It's not just people, it's also like, projects, events. My aerobics class has a birth chart, like, and you learn a lot about the personality and like how to work with people when you look at astrology. And so every new and full moon, I do some kind of ritual or ceremony, and some kind of study on like what's going on. Right now, I think Gemini and Sagittarius are like the two, like every zodiac sign has its opposite in the pie chart, right? And some of them are like very opposite, like very distinct personalities, but they also have things in common. And some of them are like, I think Gemini and Sagittarius are the closest opposites, if that makes sense. They're both mutable. One's mutable fire, Sagittarius, and one's mutable air, Gemini. They're both chatty and love a party, And so anyway, here we are in Gemini season in the Sagittarius full moon flower oracle, studying, I don't know, pay attention to the moon phases and how they affect you. That's learning. That's a spiritual practice. And metaphysical folklore is where a lot of people are putting meaning into it. I would say the Grateful Dead is metaphysical folklore, not a band. It is something that so many people have put so much meaning into, and it has woven a tapestry of various threads, all tie-dye, you know what I mean, coming together, and like, and it's been really incredible what like community has created, and also just like what is created from this intent from a well, let it be known there's a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. That's a lyric from their song Ripple. Anyway, some things to think about. You can get spiritual practice from lots of unexpected places, and it's not just through religion. I think this is the first time I'm even mentioning religion on my spirituality podcast, which is religion exists. Listen, I'm all for groups of people connecting spiritually. Philippians, no, it's Psalm 133:3, where there is unity, God commands a blessing. That's not just through religion, right? Like that's lots of gatherings of people, and it's not just gatherings of people around the concept of God, although of course I think that's even more powerful. But religion has historically, and I will use his historically specifically because it's a tool of the patriarchy, to hoard power and control and to frequently manipulate people into believing something specific so that they support power and control for a few. I think the most incredible use of spirituality is to empower people. And there is a distinction between success and significance that I think is important. Success is just, you achieving the thing. Significance is where you help other people achieve the thing, right? Like true leadership is like being at the bottom of the ladder, helping people get up, right? And so that's the vibe I'm bringing to the function. So let's empower people through their spirituality. Let's see. I want to talk about different, like I have notes in my spell book. It's so funny. I resisted putting my life into various little notebooks, but now it's just how I live and it's the best way for me to function. So it's like sometimes I want to take a note on something and I'm like freezing because I am having analysis paralysis about which notebook it goes into. But when I map out the podcast, it goes in the spell book. When I'm learning, like when I take notes at church, it goes in the spell book. When I take notes from living systems. So I want to talk about Leah Garza. She's someone I get a lot of nourishment from spiritually. I talk about her on the podcast all the time because she really influences how I'm thinking about the world around me in a very positive way, which like I think a good spiritual practice does that. I took her Akashic mentorship class last year. Couldn't recommend it high enough. Like, put it on your bucket list if it attracts you. Like, she's such a good teacher, and she really teaches you how to ask the right questions and how to cultivate your own relationship with the Akasha, which is all that is. It's like the other world. In ancient Celtic wisdom, which that is my entire ethnic background based on the DNA test, is it's all Scottish and Irish. I was like I was lied to growing up because they told me it was Irish and then a little bit of French. Not true. Scottish and Irish. That's it. That's all. So I know I come from rebellious stock. I come from colonized people. I come from people who are very like earth-based wheel of the year stuff. And so that's what I've been really leaning into in terms of like ancient wisdom and understanding things in cycles. But something cool that I learned about Celtic spirituality is that they call it the other world, and so it's kind of funny when I think I can see things, when I experience seeing things, it's not I think I can see things, it's when I experience seeing things that are not in the material world, that's the other world. And it's really interesting to think of it that way. So the Akasha, I just think of it as like it's almost like a library. I mean, for me, it's a library of like all the lessons from all the lifetimes that I have lived, am living, that exist, because time and space isn't real. So like we have this like miracle moment. A good Einstein quote that I got yesterday from Marianne Williamson. I'm taking a coaching course with her. So she's another spiritual teacher that I connect to and learn from. And it says time and space are only illusions of consciousness. That's from Einstein. The present, the holy instant, that's the miracle mind. That's where we're getting our miracles from. And we can like intersect into this present moment and just be so present. And a big shift that I felt recently is like letting go of some baggage that's been holding me away from the present moment. And it's like, anxiety is focused on the future, depression is focused on the past. I've heard that. And like, I really think there is something very freeing to just taking a breath, putting your roots down, and being in the present moment. Here we are together, asynchronously, but yet here we are spending this moment together, and miracles can come through. Leah Garza also teaches a class called Living Systems. And it's kind of interesting because like I'm glad I did the Akashic mentorship first, because I'm experiencing living systems from a more intentionally spiritual place than I think I would have if I had started with living systems and then gone into Akashic mentorship. So it's really fascinating, but it's all like cyclical. And there are students who have done living systems every year that she's offered it. This is the third cycle. So anyway, highly recommend Leah. She's got a great podcast. It's Crystals of Altamira. Also there's not a podcast, a great Instagram that she has. I don't think she has a podcast. It's called Magical Baddies, which is also very good. All of those episodes are great. She teaches a lot about spirituality there. And I have multiple episodes with Leah Garza, so you can just go and look on my podcast. back entries and find Leah Garza. She has so much to teach. I've really learned a lot about her, about like spirituality and like compassion, and like the perception that everyone is inherently good, which I do really believe. And I think you have to really leave a lot of carceral stuff behind. But I think the more work I do in decoloniality, the easier it is to understand like this inherent goodness that comes through all of us, and like how um, our trauma and our experiences on the earth plane kind of screw us up a little bit from like expressing our loving. Um, Someone recently taught me, my coach taught me that when people aren't nice, it's just underdeveloped people skills. And that has really helped level up my compassion. I'm like, oh, I see that. Um, okay. So Leah Garza, let's see, Marianne Williamson. I love her. I love her spiritual teaching. She teaches a lot about A Course in Miracles, which I noticed probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I noticed that like, and I didn't really get into God until I was 31. So like that was 14 years ago. I was in Al-Anon recovery, and they taught me that I could believe in a higher power, and that there was no specifics about what that could be, but like a belief in a higher power helped to take the pressure off the material world. And they did not use that language, but I've been thinking a lot about the distinction. This is from a Marianne teaching, but the distinction between the material world and the spiritual world, because a true visionary is focused on what can be, and that's some things not seen, spiritual, right? And the material world is what has manifested, that someone dreamed up this fake flower arrangement that ended up at my grandmother's house, which then ended up in my house, right? So, right, like someone had to think it up before it became real. My neighbor Marion had to think up doing a pet portrait of Biscuit Reynolds and chose which photo I sent her to make into a portrait, and then it came into the material world, right? So just thinking about that, like that the people who have really made a difference in the world are not thinking in the material world and not being restrained by the material world. They are thinking into um things that haven't been created yet. John Mayer said this in an interview. John Clayton Mayer, I love to throw the middle name when I know it, said like some of the songs that are his best are the ones he didn't like at first, but he trusted the instinct to just keep working on it. And so just remember that when you're creating stuff and you don't get it yet, like maybe you don't have to get it yet. Maybe you can just get into the flow of just like whatever's coming through at that time and stay in the flow until it's birthed. And then it gets a birth chart, and then it's here. And your energetic interaction with the universe is when you create the thing. It's not when, thousands of people love it, right? Like that's the material world, and that's looking for success in the wrong places. Okay. So Marianne Williamson, I'm taking this miracle mindedness course with her. It's not a course, it's a coaching cohort. Anyway, whatever. We get on Zoom for 2.5 hours a month and study together. And it's based on the principles in A Course in Miracles. And A Course in Miracles is a channeled document, which I would call anything that I think is channeled through God's love can be the word of God. Right? Like people really want to limit it to the specific Bible that's like, taught by hegemonic Christians for power and control. And like all the homophobic stuff in the Bible is just added in the 40s, in the 1940s. Look that up on the World Wide Web. It's really bonkers how things are wielded for power over marginalized people that are just taken as, oh, this is just how it is in the Bible. That is not. The Bible just keeps getting manipulated by people. So you really want to find the right versions of the word, whatever you want that to be. I was going to talk about this at the end, but part of my spiritual practice lately that I've kind of tuned into as of April is really diving into the word myself, because, and I mean this, the specific Bible, like learning a lot, like, and everything is take what you like and leave the rest. I don't like every part of every book or movie I enjoy, but like there's a lot of good stuff in the Bible, and there's a version of the Bible that Agape talks about in the frequently asked questions, which Agape Church, that's another major part of my spirituality, is the Agape International Spiritual Center, created by Michael Bernard Beckwith and a crew of 13 people. Like 37 years ago. And I started going to in-person church in 2019, became a member. And then when I moved up here to the North Pole, I've been attending live stream services ever since. I go pretty much every week. If I can't watch it live on a Sunday, I'll listen to it in a bathtub, because I find baths are like part of my soothing spiritual ritual. But Agape uses a version of the Bible that's based in the Gnostic teachings, and is like directly translated from the Aramaic to English. Because a lot of the versions of the Bible that are out there, and there's so many, are like translations of translations of translations. And there's always a bias. And because language is just so subjective, right? So I really want to get my hands on that version. And I emailed them to try to figure out where to get my hands on that version. But in the meantime, I kind of just picked the most empowering language that I can find for a verse that I'm studying. But let's see. I really love Philippians 4:8. Whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable. If there is any excellence, anything worthy of praise, think of these things. And I just want to say, like, I draw the link between that. Like, first of all, in your thought life, like if you can spiral down, you can spiral up. That's from Bianca Russo on my podcast a couple months, last month. I don't know, whenever that was, not that long ago. But I also think that's true of other people, because this is a people skill thing I've learned, is that like almost everybody knows like what their flaws are deep down. Even a narcissist knows what their flaws are. They just don't think about them because they delude themselves. And that you don't need to point them out. Like I grew up thinking criticism was love, and that is not true. And I regret all of the criticism I've lobbed at anyone I loved. Um, there's some good, well-worded criticism I lobbed at people who deserved it every now and again. But it's a Virgo rising. I'm really good at like pointing out flaws, but like that's not my job. My job is to love people. Only God can judge me, right? Like that's whose job it is, right? So anyway, I just think that's just a good, wise thing to just focus on people's strengths. That's how you build people up. It's how you get people to do what like you hope they'll do. But again, that's codependency to expect anybody to act any type of way other than how they're acting right now, you know? And I just keep learning these levels of where I'm codependent and all of that learning. It's so funny. I used to think healing was an event you arrived at, and it is not. It's just an ongoing unfolding of onion layers. Okay. But anyway, I've been studying the word. That's just been part of my practice. It's just like reading books about how our thoughts create our lives, and how what we say creates the world around us. And I have a couple of friends who also love the Bible, and so I get to exchange these words with them, and it's been really nourishing for me. Again, take what you like and leave the rest. I know a lot of people are very traumatized by the Bible and religion, and I'm so grateful that of all the trauma experience, religion was not one of them. I will also say I talked about Joel Osteen in my early episodes of the podcast, but I have not vibed Joel Osteen's stuff for years. And I find that fascinating that like, you know, it was like really necessary for a while and then no longer. I used to take classes with Kyle Cease, who I really enjoyed. He was a stand-up comic who became a spiritual teacher, but I haven't vibed his stuff. I mean, every now and again I'll watch one of his YouTube videos, but I haven't vibed his stuff. But either of those people I think are good people if that study resonates with you. But I want to talk more about people that I'm vibing a lot. Michael Bernard Beckwith, still one of my primary spiritual teachers. I love him so much. I love that at church he does not shy away from the politics of the day and condemning war, because I think war is a failure of humans. The universe hates war. The universe likes creation energy. And we're creating the wrong stuff. Like we have, my friend Alexa said this, like we have more stuff than we ever have had on the face of the earth ever before. And this is why I'm so passionate about shopping secondhand. And I just think it's super gross. Like all the consumption is so gross. Like, I really think there's a lot to just like generative renewable things. Like we have everything we need on earth right now to have a renewable economy based on renewable energy, but it's because we have money in politics that, you know, and power hoarding and all of that kind of stuff. So each and every one of us finding peace within ourselves and doing the work to create more peace and compassion from us, and then affecting the world right where we are from whatever we can do, feeding neighbors, growing extra in your garden to give away, you know, putting money, cash in the hands of human beings instead of like going like, you know, if you can buy your pet stuff from a local pet shop versus a big box store, right? Like if you anything you can do that's not on Amazon, right? Like all of those little ways where we spend our money intentionally, I believe that changes the whole face of the economy. Like it's really our big power is our attention, our time, treasure, and our talent. I've talked about this a lot. That's for another podcast another day. But I love that Michael Bernard Beckwith talks about that. He has a great podcast. I forget what it's called, but it's good. You can just look at Michael Bernard Beckwith on YouTube. He's got a lot of good stuff there. And good old agape sermons on there too. But like Agape International Spiritual Center has a YouTube as well and a great website, agapelife.com. Highly recommend all of that. And his book, Life Visioning, get it on audiobook. It's got some guided meditations in it. If you want to know like what your soul wants you to do and how it wants to unfold, that book is so good for that. I did not feel the resonant tone of abundance until I did one of those meditations. I'd never felt it before in my body, and I was 40 years old when I finally felt it. So like it's really, I didn't feel relaxed until I was 34 years old. Like I didn't even know what that felt like until one day I was laying in a hammock, had a little edible. I was on by a river, and I was like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to be relaxed. I was like, I'd heard about it for so many years. I just didn't know. But yeah, I was a big overachiever and I drove myself through fear. Um, and I don't do that anymore. I'm learning how to work at the pace of peace. We can grow. Okay. Camp Chesterfield. This is a newer one for me too. My friend Manda, who's been on this podcast, she's coming back because she's had so much growth over the last 6 months. I'm like, girl, we got to get you back on the podcast. Camp Chesterfield is next door to her in Indiana. And it is the Indiana Association of Spiritualists. It's existed for more than 100 years. And they have online Sunday services. So I started going to services on Zoom with Manda. And it's there's a sermon and a meditation, and then they go into about 20 minutes each. There's two mediums, and they channel messages from your loved ones and guides. It is incredible. I've learned so much just through the like wisdom that pops through in those services, and I get a lot out of it. And a bunch of my friends started going. And I wrote a blog post inviting people, come to church with me if you want. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And so I talked about Agape and I talked about Camp Chesterfield, and now people are coming from my community. So it's kind of cool to like see that unfold and see people get messages who I love. So anyway, it's Camp Chesterfield's really cool. I wouldn't necessarily identify religiously in any way, but they're spiritualists, which does have like a declaration of principles, which is also in the link in my blog post. I put their declaration of principles, but I would say I'm definitively a member of Agape. Like that's my main church affiliation, but I really love Camp Chesterfield, and I totally, I F with Camp Chesterfield heavily. So anyway, that's a good one. And I would encourage you to just show up on Zoom sometime just to see what it's like. Because this is the thing, like you got to try things out. Like you're never passionate about something until you're actually doing it, like, yeah, like I didn't get passionate about teaching aerobics till I started teaching aerobics, and I realized, oh man, I think this is why I'm here on earth, is to teach this class. And I just love it. Like there is just nothing to me like the feeling of being on a dance floor, leading people in movement. And even like it's just like I surprise myself what I say sometimes, but like I'm always saying like what needs to be said in that moment. You know what I mean? It's like I open up the channel and I'm just here to dance and move. And I usually have a framework for everything that I do and the songs that I work with. But like it's funny because like if I have a new person in class, especially now that I've been teaching in person again, I've been teaching in person monthly in Seattle. I'm going to go to Minneapolis at the end of June or mid to end of June and teach 2 classes out there. Really excited. But like it's fun to see like new people who haven't been to class before, like in just their face and how they react. And like 100% of the time, people leave my classes with a smile on their face because my work product is joy. And I love that. Love, joy, and peace are the 3 things that we need to meditate on most. That was from a sermon by Reverend Adara at Camp Chesterfield. And I just think about that all the time. LJP meditation, love, joy, peace. Think of these things. Anyway, Philippians 4:8, just saying. Okay, let's see who else. Shaman Durek. I love Shaman Durek so much. I've gotten to meet him a couple of times. It's funny because I got connected to him originally because a friend of mine did a mini documentary about him for like Mind Body Valley or something back when Shaman Durek had like less than 10,000 people on his Instagram, and now he's like very world famous, and he's engaged to and about to get married to a princess of Norway. And he's like his journey is fascinating, and I love, like I've learned so much from him about like the physiology of moving energy and entities and just so much. There's so much to learn from him. He has a really great podcast called Ancient Wisdom Today. He teaches a lot on like inner child and play energy and just like being in the moment and having fun and being lit. And he says like being on the lit train. I love Shaman Durek so much. And he also taught me this, and I've been noticing this a lot actually especially in aerobics classes or other places that are high energy, like meaning big vibrant energy is yawning means that you're moving energy. And so like he'll say spirit yawn if we're moving energy, and like he'll do a thing and like your body will yawn. It's so fascinating. Anyway, so I've noticed the yawning thing. So I like to teach from that too. Is like I think people assume that yawning is like rude and assume that yawning means you're tired, but actually yawning physiologically means you need more breath. But the yawning, I think metaphysically, is you moving energy, and the breath is necessary for moving energy. So this is why we breathe, is to move energy, because we're like these energetic meat sacks. Anyway, so I love Shaman Durek. Love his podcast, Ancient Wisdom Today. Love his Instagram. His Instagram's great. He also does Saturday morning. It's not every Saturday morning, but he does Saturday morning like Zoom temple services. Those are $10. Camp Chesterfield, by the way, is donation based. And so is Agape. And yeah, and Shaman Durek does classes. I got to take a class with him and my mom in 2018 when she came out to LA to be a dancer in my aerobics video series, which by the way, if you don't have my aerobics video series, it's always linked in the show notes. It's a great way to support my work. And it's a really great aerobics video series. It's got great music, really good dancing. It's just so funny because it's like how I taught my class in April of 2018. My class is ever evolving, and what are we, almost in June of 2024. So like I'm very ready to produce a new workout video series. I just don't yet know how. So I stay ready. Okay. What's next? What's next? I believe very strongly in the age of Aquarius, our spiritual communities are also a very important place, because if you don't have anyone in your life that you can talk to about this stuff, I think it really stunts your growth. There is literally no area of my life where I cannot talk about my spirituality. Even my business mentorship is incredibly faith-based. And so like, it's and I could not be an entrepreneur if I did not have a strong and sturdy faith. I just, I started Al-Anon like right after I started my own law firm, like working for myself, and like it was so necessary, because like when things are uncertain, that's what faith is for, right? And most things are actually uncertain. Safety is a colonialist illusion. And so anyway, I just cherish the fact that I have no filter on my spiritual connection, because I just am. Oh my God, one of my friends, I ordered a thing for one of my besties from a local lesbian artisan, and she's my friend on Facebook, which I did not remember. And she was asking me a question about, I forget what she said. She didn't say woo woo. She said, I think hoo hoo or something like that. And she said, like, I'm about half hoo hoo. I'm not like all the way, but like, she's the one with like chakra beads. You know what I mean? She's the one who knew what I was talking about when I said I wanted obsidian beads to like absorb bad energy from my friend. So anyway, it was just funny. She was asking me questions about that. And so anyway, I'm all the way. I told her, I was like, that I'm all the way this way. And she's like, oh yes, all the way hooey hooey. I think that's what she called us, hooey hooey. I said, I'm all the way hooey hooey. And so I just, once you learn how to be your authentic self, and like that, it's like a muscle. You like, because we're trained, not taught, when we grow up to like be this version of ourselves that keeps us safe, right? Like I was trained to be an overachiever perfectionist because that's what kept me safe in an alcoholic upbringing, right? And so then eventually like we start to just like release the things that aren't really us, like these trauma masks that we have. And like then as I've become more and more myself, I just can't let it go. It's just who I am now. And like I wouldn't even know how to personality mask. Like I'm not that good at it anymore. I used to be great at it, and take me or leave me. Okay, so, and that's great. It's all by invitation. Again, take what you like and leave the rest. So spiritual community is so important. The Chrissy Tolley Discord, I've had her on my podcast many times. I think 3 times so far, maybe more. And many more times to come, because Chrissy Tolley is one of my ride or dies. And she started her Discord, and it has been extraordinary as a spiritual community space. I see people developing their dream interpretation skills, their psychic skills, their card reading skills. Like there's so much support in it. And like I love to get to go to like the weekly Wednesday and just say like, oh, this is how I'm learning how to interact with land spirits as I'm house sitting and going into different places, like again, do not fuck around with land spirits is all I'm saying. Like I have before unwittingly. And it's more trouble than it's worth. Just go in with a generous spirit and like a connection and clear. Um, and there's lots of tools for clearing, but that's not what this episode's about. So find your spiritual community. That's on Discord. I love Discord. My Glowing Goddess Sisterhood also is very much one of my hooey places. Where we're all very spiritual, but of course, like we don't all believe the same stuff. It's just that we all have a faith practice of some kind. And we do some rituals together, and we're gathering. That's why I'm going out to Minneapolis. We're gathering on the shores of a lake to celebrate the summer solstice and have bonfires and dance and just like glow up each other. Because there's something, again, where there is unity, God commands a blessing. So I just can't wait to be together with them. It's such a nourishing sisterhood. And in 2019, having the Glowing Goddess Getaways to look forward to monthly is why I stayed alive during some of that really hard time that I was going through. And I just like have so much love for the sisterhood. Okay. Also, I have found some nourishment through my friend Jana of Feeling Loudly. She's been on the podcast a couple times, through her Patreon and Discord. She created a really cool class, and that's another great way to develop your spirituality is just take classes, set aside a little in your budget to like take things that nourish you and help your curiosities and your development. They offered a tarot class where we went through the major arcana, and they did it in a very cool intuitive way. So there was like an intuitive prompt every day, and it taught us how to connect to the card ourselves and get the meaning from the card ourselves. And I'm really grateful I went through it with a new deck that I got thanks to I think this was from Rima, one of my listeners. Thanks, Dr. Rima. Rima had sent me something through Amazon, and so I got the credit because I got 2 copies of Dolly Parton's fashion book. And so for just a moment, I cuddled both of them. And then I returned the other one. So I returned the other one and I got a tarot deck, the Modern Witch Tarot, which is actually quite beautiful. And if you're watching this on the YouTubes or the Spotify, I'm showing you. But it's just absolutely beautiful. And the journey through the major arcana was quite incredible. Getting to know this new deck, like bit by bit. So anyway, so that was really cool because like in community, we were able to see what everyone was vibing and connecting to the archetype and the energy of each card, which was just so special. And sometimes like, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I'm a big believer in like spiritual connection and like doing spirituality together. Yeah. Okay, let's see. And getting readings. That's another great way to develop your spirituality. I always think that a psychic reading is some cross between therapy and spiritual practice because there's always stuff, well, not usually, there is always stuff that we can't see because we're just too close to the tree to see the forest, right? And I would just suggest like get curious. Like I have so many cool psychics that I've interviewed on my podcast that you can get readings from. And if you're like, wanting help on your life path or with business, I do business brainstorm sessions one-on-one, and I also do Reiki sessions one-on-one. And usually in those sessions, I have things coming through. Like I just did a business brainstorm with someone this week and sent her away with the recommendation of life visioning with Michael Bernard Beckwith. And a few other things like Professional Troublemaker by Lovey Ajayi Jones, which I've talked about on this podcast many times. But like it's a good one for worthiness. Like when you want to like figure out what your thing is and like root into it, like that's a really good book for that. So anyway, that's an offer I have, but like I really do think like if you resonate with someone, like get a reading, like see what is turning up for you right now, because we all have this like unique life path, right? And unique things that our souls want to experience. And I kind of feel like in many ways the spiritual journey is like this, it's like a scavenger hunt, just like making connections from thing to thing and realizing, oh, these threads weave together in such a beautiful way. Okay, let's see. I have a few other things that have popped out in the word to me that I wanted to share with you that have just spoken to me. Again, take what you like and leave the rest. But something that I've noticed that has really helped me with my suicidal thoughts, and I've talked very openly on this podcast about my experience with suicidal thoughts, and something I think that is true in my life, and I actually got this from a Kyle Cease class that I took. He said like he's noticed when he feels suicidal thoughts, it's usually an ego death, the death of some part of our personality that's like clinging because it realizes it has to go. So it's almost like these, like whenever I think like I want to kill myself, or like the visions and the thoughts start coming through, what I have noticed is the fastest way for that to be released is if I talk to a trusted friend or coach or therapist about it as soon as possible. And I have noticed the faster I'm on it, like most recently it happened not long after Biscuit Reynolds passed, because I realized I'm gonna cry. If I cry, it's just part of my process. But like I realized when Biscuit Reynolds passed, I don't have anyone in my intimate life other than my friends, which of course my friendships are, and my intimate friendships especially, are ongoing and very, very important to me. But I don't have interdependent, reliant friendships where like um me showing up every day is a thing that is life or death for something else, like the way it would if I had a kid or a partner or a cat or a dog, right? Like when I had those relationships, it feels like I haven't not had a pet since probably, I mean, God, like sometime at the end of law school, like I had a mouse. I had a mouse like my second year of law school named Leroy. And then like there was like a few months, not that long, after Leroy died, where I did not have any interdependent creatures on me. And then I started dating my first long-term partner. So then I had a long-term partner, and she had a dog named Leroy, little white Chihuahua. And I was third year law student. One of my great regrets in life is not walking the stage with that Chihuahua under my arm as I should have. Other people brought their babies. I was like, I should have brought Leroy. Anyway, like then I had cats that were this partner's cats, right? Like she had 3 pets, and then we got Macy, my dog, and then like ever since then, like and Macy overlapped with Biscuit Reynolds, and I had my 2 Persian cats, Alf and Bear, right? Like so it's like these interdependent creatures. And I kind of thought when I knew Biscuit Reynolds, sort of like towards the end of 2023, I realized, oh, I do not think he is going to live through 2024. But it still felt like his death came very fast. And I kind of thought to myself, I was like, I don't know that I should live without a pet. You know what I mean? Like I kind of need the creature to depend on me as a thing. But like it's not like I didn't have suicidal thoughts while I had Biscuit Reynolds. I had many times where I was really like, that time again when I took time off in 2019, that was a time where like I'm really surprised I made it through, and I'm really grateful I made it through to all of the support I had metaphysically in that time, and then also my therapist. Thank God for my therapist. Anyway, so and my friends and family, but I'm an isolator when I'm going through that kind of stuff. So most people did not know I was going through that stuff, but my therapist did. So anyway, this is a very long story, but I think it's helpful for people to hear my process because I want people to feel less alone in it. And I want you to understand how important it is that you stay alive, because like even if it feels like you have nothing to live for right now, these were my thoughts. I was like, I have no one to be responsible for. There are people in the future who you are responsible for. And if you keep showing up, this is kind of like part of my impetus for doing the podcast. It's like, it's not like I get mega numbers on the people listening to it right away, but over time, the numbers really stack up. So like, just think about the people that you have yet to influence that you will. And there are people in your life who like are watching and connecting to you who are really affected by you that we can't know about either. The more I learn about soul contracts, the more I understand this stuff. But what I have discovered about ego death is that it's like this part of you that's convincing you that you have to die, but actually it's them that has to die. It's that version of you, that old version of you that's not serving you anymore. And what I have found is the faster I can talk to a trusted person about it, it shines a light on it. And here's the verse in the word, such an intro. Oh, my ADHD. I love it so much. It's my superpower. Ephesians 5:13. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything illuminated becomes a light. And I have gotten enough feedback about this podcast and about the podcasts I do where I really talk into my mental health stuff, that I know that what I have struggled through becomes a purpose. That there's a purpose to my pain. And that is something that really brings me along when I feel these feelings and have these thoughts about like, oh, there's no one I'm responsible to in my home, which is a bummer. Like I am the kind of woman who thinks about like I do in when I was growing up playing the game Clue, which has all these rooms, these weird rooms that you don't think about in a regular person's house, right? A library, a conservatory, um, you know, you think about those things, but then actually I realized I deeply want a conservatory. I want a room where the plants can thrive because there's so much light and so many windows, and that we can see the stars on a chilly night. And that's where the puzzle will be, and where, because I always want to have a puzzle going, and where the fireplace is, and there's a record player because I want to listen to music, and plants love music, right? Like I want a conservatory, literally. I'm like, I don't know how that's going to happen, but I deeply want one, right? And I also want a library because, like, the other day someone was referencing a book that I'm in, and I know I have a copy of it, and but it's like in a box in my little storage shed. It's not here in my house because I don't have a library. I have a tiny book stack, you know. Anyway, all that to say, I dream of a time where I can have a big house and lots of pets, and I look forward to that because it's in the future. And so I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other today, knowing that I'm building the foundation for that life, and that if it's not here yet, then it's not supposed to be here yet. And I really trust divine timing. And that's been one of my great spiritual lessons lately, is releasing my idea of what the timing is supposed to be and trusting that time doesn't exist, but development and process do. And so I'm just developing, I'm just processing. And just trusting that the more development and process I do, the more loving and supportive I can be to the things that are coming into my life, in their own divine timing. We're always just waiting on the day, right? So, and then someday the day will be here. Okay. That was Ephesians 5:13. Everything exposed to the light, exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything illuminated becomes a light. Okay. Mark 11:23. Whoever may tell this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and doesn't doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says is happening, he shall have whatever he says. First of all, I wish I had read that with she. Whoever may tell this mountain, be taken up and cast to the sea, and doesn't doubt in her heart, but believes that what she says is happening, she shall have whatever she says. Okay. I said it the way I meant to say it. It's just contrary. It's just whoever chose to write that out was probably some man, right? So like some woman is reading it to you, and I choose to read it that way. So but that's just remembering that, like, you can pray, and if you don't have faith, it's not going to work. But if you have faith, and even if you don't pray, it can still work. That's the point of faith, is like your belief system is really creating your reality. And something I learned from Leah Garza is all beliefs are coming from your unmet needs, right? And so beliefs are in the body, thoughts are in the mind, and that's something we really get to work with. So I really work on having a supportive thought life environment that supports my faith and my belief in what's coming through for me and through me, and trusting that. And I'm going to leave you with this prayer that I love. And also just remembering, just things happen, right? Like you can believe things into happening. And there's so many times I believed something was going to happen and it didn't. It's so funny. It's almost like I can mark my life in Dead and Company shows that I thought I would go to. Like there's one at the Hollywood Bowl in 2021. I really thought I would go to, and then I didn't. I was so surprised. But it's almost like I have this childlike faith that just keeps happening, and someday it's going to work, right? Anyway, like last year I thought I was going to go to the Gorge show. And then the poster came out and it had this cool dragon coming over the mountain. And I was like, oh, imagine me coming into that show on a dragon. That would be the coolest, right? Like, cause like a dragon flight from the Olympic Peninsula to the Gorge Amphitheater would actually be quite beautiful and a little bit terrifying. So anyway, it's just funny, like all these things in the material that come to fruition. But then like I read all these people about their experience at that show at the Gorge, and they said it was really crowded and really hard, and I was like, I didn't want that experience, so it didn't happen for me. So anyway, all that to say, like, I will just keep believing in things and seeing what works out, because you know what, like, it's not going to work out if you never try. God is always working in abundance and kind of effing around and finding out, right? So like I was laying around on the fourth floor one time and like just noticed all these seedlings popping up, and it was just like, what plants are they going to be? Who knows? Like who knows if that plant actually even already knows what it's going to be, but it's going to try. And there's lots of trees that come up in the ground that never have the conditions to become the full tree, right? But eventually one does, and that's just how it works. It's just, I think if greater things than these shall ye do, that's what Jesus says. I forget what Bible verse that is, but it's a Bible verse. I believe, like, part of A Course in Miracles is just showing us the way through Christ consciousness, that we have the possibility in us to greater things than these, to do stuff like that. So Anyway, Jesus was misunderstood by people. And part of living life is just being willing to be misunderstood. And I'm willing to be misunderstood. This is why I have a podcast where I talk about all this stuff. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, fatkiddanceparty@gmail.com. Please support my Patreon. Patreon.com/FKDP stands for Fat Kid Dance Party. I want to support you. Please support me so that I can keep creating. And also you could buy me a coffee or a snack. You can buy me something cute for my Amazon wish list. I don't love supporting Jeffrey Bezos, but he sure makes it easy for my besties to send me presents, and I love presents. I'm speaking into a microphone that was on my wish list. Thank you. So I hope this helps. Be well. I love you. Sending you a blessing. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week.